Welcome back to Level Up with Loraine. I am very excited for today's episode. So, as you guys know, this channel is for all things personal development, professional development, lifestyle, book reviews, travel reviews, all things nice, right? And today I'm particularly excited about the episode because I have a very special young lady. I'm a bit biased because she's family, but also I believe I'm a very objective person when it comes to what I believe will add value to me and what I'm trying to do with this channel. And so you will find that the guests that I bring on board, of course, are people close to me, but people that I believe bring value. So without wasting time, I want to introduce you to Tanya Maponga. Hi, Tanya.
Hi. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm so excited you're here. And thank you so much for making time for me and my listeners.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Awesome. So Tanya is a talent acquisition professional and she works for a big tech company. She's also a founder of Recruiterbae, and it's a community-based employment brand with 10,000 plus members. And for me, this is big, right? There's like 101 million recruiters out there, but it's very few people who, can really harness their job, their passion and turn it into a side hustle, a business that adds value to people. And so that's why you are here. So welcome, Tanya. Tell us.
Thank you.
Kick us off by telling us a bit about who is Tanya, right? Maybe let me take the biasness out of me introducing you. Introduce yourself.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So as Loraine said, I'm Tanya and I am a talent acquisition professional. I've got blended agency and in-house experience. So I started off working in a multinational agency, then moved into a boutique agency, and then finally made the move into in-house, where I've been working for about 3 years now. And I started off Recruiterbae just to support and give advice to people who needed it during the pandemic, actually. Everyone was losing their jobs, everyone was frustrated, and I had so many people DMing me, and it started to get a bit overwhelming. So I thought, why not just create a page where I can share the same information with everyone? Then people started following. I said, there's something to this. So worked with the branding, made it a bit, eye-catching, and just took it from there. And I think the growth has been pretty organic. And yeah, it's been 3 years in the making now.
Yeah, that's amazing. What do you think sets you apart or differentiates you from your typical recruiter, right? Where you can actually have 10,000 plus people paying you and tuning into or logging onto your blog to read your articles, pinging you for advice. What is it that sets Tanya apart from everyone else or people in your industry?
That's a really good question. I think I started off in an agency, and when you start off in an agency, the most important thing is money and getting people into a business so you can make a fee and so you can gain, commission. But I think, fortunately for me, I actually started to care about my clients and my candidates, and I cared more about making the right hire. And during that process, I learned so much from them. And I think that I learned very quickly that business is personal. It's not just about the money. It's about the relationship that you build with people. It's about earning trust with those people. And what that does is it naturally converts those relationships into money. Whereas other people focused on selling a product, selling something. And actually that people can sense that it radiates an energy of, you don't care about me. And fortunately, I actually care about these candidates and clients, maybe too much, but it's worked in my benefit because the problems that they have given me an opportunity to find solutions.
Yeah. Okay. So whilst you're on that, on bringing people into your confidence, building the trust, the relationships that you can then, build a business off of, before we really get into the crux of this episode, I've got a few sort of rapid questions for Tanya, just so that the listeners who, I need to stop calling listeners, my friends, right? So just so that my friends can get to know a bit about you and get a glimpse into who Tanya is. So, first question, summer or winter, and why?
Summer, because I'm a summer baby. And summer's the best.
And you live in the UK.
Exactly, so we never get it. So I appreciate the little bit of summer that we get when we get it.
All right. And what's your favorite social media platform and why?
Instagram, because it's one of the only platforms I have, and it doesn't involve too much reading. It's just quite lazy. It's just pictures. Yeah. And I like that.
Yeah. And just on that, have you found that even just for your business, right? Instagram would be still your favorite platform?
That's a really good question. And unfortunately, I think that's no. I think I've started to realize just with the changes that the platform's experiencing, the algorithm, I need to move with the times. And actually, I think LinkedIn would be the best platform for this type of business. And equally for early careers, I think TikTok is actually where we need to have a bigger presence on.
Got you. So I just joined TikTok. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's like, what is going on? It feels so sweet. But yeah, you will talk to me about that offline and help me.
We'll figure it out.
Next question. Who is your inspiration and why?
Oh, good question. I think women in general. I find women very inspiring, you included, just because I think we are very multifaceted. And I think if you need something to get done or you want to add value, just get a woman to do it. And I'm biased. I think we are such an elite gender. So I think that I learn from the women in my life, but also women just around me inspire me on a day-to-day basis.
I love that. I love that. And what's new that's happening in your life right now that you can share with us? You're probably like, I don't know these people.
What's new? Okay, so this is not completely new, but there's some new aspects to it. I'm very into like wellness. So I have like a very specific routine when it comes to the gym. I like to eat particular foods. I'm just obsessed with like holistic health. So I've been trying out new fitness classes, ones that really push me to the edge. And it's new and it's going well. But I think it's just allowing me to get to know a different side of me, and also just like challenging me mentally, which I love.
Awesome. Have you always been into fitness or this is new?
No, so I've always had some sort of fitness routine since school, to be honest, because in school we do like PE, which is like physical education. I think that's what it stands for. And you're always encouraged to do like exercise during the week. And then when I left school, I maintained that to some degree. The only time where that stopped was during lockdown because I just couldn't find the motivation and so many things happened. But aside from that, I think I've always had some sort of routine, but I'm applying a different level of like discipline, which is just, interesting.
Awesome. You're stretching yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
And lastly, what advice would you give your younger self? What would you tell 18, 19-year-old Tanya?
Okay, that's a very good question. So I'm 27, so I still think I'm a bit of a baby in this thing called life. But I think I would tell, and I still tell myself this, to just be a bit more present. And the reason I say this is because I think, especially in school and depending on the upbringing you have, you always are working towards something. In school, you're working towards grades, A levels, some sort of attainment. And as great as that is, as much as it can make you develop into this ambitious person, it makes you focus too much on your future self and not your present self. And I think that as someone who was like a bit of a high achiever at school, that has had, it's a bit of a conflicting thing for me, because it means that I'm always looking forward to the next thing. And the older that I've gotten, the more I've just been like, wait, hun, there was a time that you wanted to be exactly where you are right now. Like, just take time, take it easy, enjoy the moment. And of course, like find some sort of balance between working towards my goals and that gap and just enjoying where I am as well.
Wow. And can I tell you, at 35, well, no, sorry, I'm 36. Jeez. At 36, I'm still struggling with that, right?
Yeah.
You are always chasing the next best thing.
Yeah.
Once you attain that thing you are chasing, you don't sort of spend time in it and be present and enjoy it, or really chasing the next best thing. And that is not living. It's not living. It's not, that can't be life. So I can totally relate. And I think a lot of people, and I think a lot of my listeners can also relate. So that's powerful. Okay. And so let's get into, I think, the crux of what today's episode is about, which is really, and I titled it, or we titled it together, I got job, now what? So you focus on helping people in different levels of their career get the job, right? Having a great looking CV, optimizing their LinkedIn, you know, up in interviews and putting their best foot forward. So once they get that job, now what? So that's what we want to talk about today, right? So maybe you can start by kicking me off with, what are your thoughts about how people can strategically position themselves as soon as they land in a job, right? First day, first week, first month. What are the practical things they can start to do to be visible and position themselves for future success?
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's like a great intro, because in my experience and in my opinion, I think it literally starts from the very beginning. And I always think it's just about being intentional. As you would with anything in life that matters to you, you want to be intentional and you want to set yourself up for success by managing your manager first. And what I mean by that is just managing expectations. So if you're starting a new job, seek an understanding of what's expected of you. And this can be done and achieved through clear communication during one-to-ones, during those early meetings. And I think the best way to do this is literally just asking questions. So I actually have a set of questions that I advise people to ask. So things like, what are your expectations of me in this role for the first 12 weeks? What does success look like in this role? How is performance measured? How does the team communicate? And what platforms do we use to share ideas? And I think actually demonstrating some sort of curiosity can help you to understand what's expected of you. And that's how you create impact, because you can self-evaluate and say, okay, this is what was required of me. This is what I've done. And then you start to measure your progress very early on, just from those small questions.
Yeah, awesome. And in measuring my progress, right, there could be a couple of gaps that I read, right? Maybe I'm even aware of them before I got the job. Maybe I come into the job and I realize, shoot, these are actual gaps. What are some of the things that people can do to quickly close those gaps? So they are optimal in their roles as soon as possible.
No, that's brilliant, because that's my next point around, once you start doing the job, you are going to identify things that maybe you knew you weren't capable of doing in the beginning, or things that are now just spiraling a little bit out of control because you are in the job. And I think that's where you have to self-evaluate and actually ask, what's going well? What could go better? Where do I need support? And raise those questions to your manager. I'm very much like a person who is all about ownership. And in this day and age where we've got YouTube, we've got podcasts, we've got so many resources, my first point of contact would be to try to figure it out myself before I even seek help from a manager or a colleague. And if I find it difficult to find the answers for whatever I need help with, that's when I then raise it to my manager and say, how can you support me? Or, leverage their expertise and their resources to get to an outcome where I'm either growing or I'm being mentored or supported by someone who can fill that gap with me.
Yeah. And in terms of timelines, right? What are reasonable timelines for someone to set for themselves? To say, fine, I got this job, this level job or this managerial role. It's my first one. What is a reasonable time for me to give myself to learn, to have impact in the role before I can expect to grow? What is the typical? Yeah.
That is such a good question, because I don't know if you experience the same thing in SA, but over here, there's a lot of discourse at the moment about job hopping because it can help you to earn more money. Yeah. And my thing with job hopping is, how do you even have enough time to create the impact you've had if you've just been there 6 months? So I love this question because I think sometimes in this microwave generation, they say, where we want results instantly, you need to just take time. And I think that if you're working in an organization that's complex, give yourself time to understand the organization, give yourself time to understand the role, give yourself time to understand the people you're working with, whether it be across the different countries or teams. And in my experience, that alone can take up to a year. So if you're spending that first 6 to 12 months just finding your feet and figuring things out, by the next year, which is your second year, that's when you can start to now demonstrate true impact with the knowledge that you have of that particular organization. Because organizations are not the same, cultures are not the same, people are not the same. And actually finding your feet, especially earlier on in your career or even like mid-level, it takes time. So I think a year to 2 is like a good time frame to actually learn the job and start to make impact and make it your own.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you, because my last one of my previous jobs, when you walk into a job and this environment is not for me, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to give it my all.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in every experience has a learning. Like, there's no wasted experience. And what's important is once you go in there and you realize it's tough, for me it was understanding what is tough and what can I try and do about it. Because my next employer will want to know what effort I made.
Yes, absolutely.
To change and shift and, make it better for myself, for others, for the organization, right? But also it's learning, it's a stretch. It can't always get, to you on a silver platter. You're not always going to get the greatest culture, the greatest manager, the leads. But what are you going to do in that first 6 months, in the first 12 months that will stretch you, take you out of your own, comfort? Yeah. Otherwise, you will job hop forever. Exactly. Do you know what I mean? And it's not to say stay in a place that makes you, that drains you mentally and and kill you, mentally. But say, what have you done to try and change? Yes. And that's that's the conversation starter with the next employer, where you talk about what you have done as opposed to the bad stuff that was happening in the other organization. I think so. I think it's so important, right? That exactly to your point. Instead of job hopping, try and give yourself 6 to 12 months in a row, and get as much as you can, no matter how difficult it is.
Absolutely. Right. No, I completely co-sign. I think that's what differentiates true leadership.
Now, after my last episode with Simba, where we spoke about strategically positioning yourself for success, and people asked me for practical things you can do to build a sponsorship internally. How do I get a sponsor if I'm an introvert? Because not everyone's an extrovert like Loraine, right? Who
Yeah.
can make relationships and have people speaking for her behind in the rooms she doesn't have access to. So
Yes.
how do introverts or your entry level employees don't have that voice or confidence or whatever? How do they create those networks and relationships early on? You know what I mean? That will set them up. Yes. What are some of the practical tips you have?
Yeah. And I think for anyone who's listening to this who is an introvert, I too am one. People find this so hard to believe, but it's actually painful navigating work as an introvert. Because it's just, I feel like the corporate environment is the playground for extroverts, because you could be doing a great job, but your extrovert colleague will be the first to say something about it. And because of that, they get the credit.
Listen.
And that's an issue, particularly as you get more and more senior. So my first point of call would be perform well in terms of not just meeting, but exceeding expectations, so that you have something to back up your case. The second thing is, if you're fortunate enough to actually have a good manager will be able to say that this is a rising star and I want this person to be invested in. Be very open and transparent and say to them that, listen, this doesn't come naturally to me. So how can you support me? Because I think communication is very important when it comes to career development. And a good manager is actually supposed to help you to succeed. So you need to have this conversation. And when it comes to the conversations and what you're actually saying to one another, I think it has to be a conversation around what is it that you enjoy doing and what is it that you want to develop on. So with that should come the opportunity of having a career development plan. And that is a plan that sets out the things that you need to do and to achieve in order to get a promotion or in order to make a lateral move, which is just as valid in progression. And you know what you're working towards. So these conversations can be had during one-to-ones, or I, in the past and still now, actually have a cadence quarterly where I just talk about my career with my manager and I just tell her, this is what I've been doing. What do the next steps look like? And if it's a thing of you need sponsorship or you need a mentor, yes, a good manager will recognize that, but maybe a not so good one may not. So it's that opportunity to say, are there any people in the business that you could pair me up with? And it could be something as small as shadowing that person once a week, once a month, once a quarter, to see the stuff that they go on with, to listen into the calls that they partake in. And in this, you're learning just by being around them. And it's those small little things that I think once you start to get exposure to, especially if you're working for a company that doesn't have a formal mentoring program in place, you start to actually take ownership whilst learning and actually allowing yourself to grow unconsciously in your career.
Yeah. Awesome. That's very helpful. And when you think of opportunities for continuous learning, right? Another feedback I got actually from the recent episode was some people were saying not all of us can do an MBA, and that is so true, right? It's expensive. It's not in everyone's reach.
Yeah.
Some of the practical things that people can do that you don't need an MBA to rise up the ranks, actually. That's the truth.
No,
but
you don't.
Let's talk about the other alternatives, right? That you are, aware of. How can someone maybe leverage some learning opportunities that can help them grow with your organization or outside?
That's a really good question. I actually think that the most fascinating, inspiring, high-performing type individuals that I've spoken and worked with are just people who are committed to driving their own learning. It's not about having letters behind your name. It's about being a student of not just life, but of your expertise. I have 6 years worth of recruitment, and I guarantee that every single day I still learn something. And it's not because I'm like prescriptive with my learning of, oh, I need to do a course. It's just I'm curious. I ask questions. I tune into podcasts that allow my mind to grow. I speak to people. And I think it's through that learning that actually you're able to leverage your skills in a way that's impactful and in a way that allows you to continuously grow and develop. Because even if you were to obtain a PhD, you are still going to be learning something, and you still need to be able to be willing to, grow and develop as the world and things around us change as well.
Yeah, I love that. And, it's totally relatable. And I think one thing I can add without taking away from what you've said is the ability to learn and unlearn, right? There's a lot of things we've learned in our past. Once you join a certain organization, you need to unlearn quickly and learn the lay of that particular land. So I'll give an example. Coming from corporate or organizations I've worked for before, where it was plug and play, established, be perfect before you start that report. I now in a startup, right?
Different world.
Tech startup, and it's really one of our values is actually momentum over perfection. And what that means is literally just do and fail forward and just grab the low-hanging fruit and just and learn and iterate and learn. It will be perfect, but doesn't have to be perfect now. Can I tell you how much unlearning it has taken for me to do that? Because coming from where I'm coming from, it has to be perfect. That report has to be perfect.
No errors.
Before anyone reads it. Otherwise, we will never the same. You cannot fail. You know what I mean?
That
mindset, that shift has been difficult for me. But
absolutely,
the continuous learning, right? Understanding that actually I can fail and I can fail forward. In fact, the quicker I fail, the better, because I learn and I can quickly start to add value with better output, right?
No, absolutely. And like you said, you're learning by doing. And the thing about education, as much as it's a great way to help you understand theory, you're only going to understand whether or not it works is by doing. So I co-sign for sure.
All right. And, there is a 70-20-10 model. It's actually called the approach to learning. And I want to share this particularly for people who are like, listen, I don't have any desire to go back to school and do a postgrad or to do an MBA, right? Or people who are like, I don't have time for it. I have a family. I can't afford it. There's actually many ways in which you can learn and still achieve success, right? So this model speaks to 70% of learning takes place through experience, which is what we're talking about today, on the job. Right? 20% happens through others. So podcasts, the Tanya and Loraine show. This is learning. Right? You talking to colleagues, you having a mentor, the 20%. The last 10%, or rather only 10%, happens through courses and programs. So that's where your MBAs or your postgraduate degrees, etc. That's where that learning. So majority of the learning actually comes from the workplace and from other people's experience. And really, those letters in front of your name, the MBA, the CASA, etc., those just give you credibility, right? The first thing people see before you prove your work ethic, before you prove the first thing that gets you maybe through the door. But once you and that person with the letters both get through the door, it comes down to performance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this, who is in a position of actually hiring people, to really think about that. Because to me, that makes me think that organizations are responsible for allowing people without those those credentials to get through those doors, because there's an issue in that in itself. So I'm very much for programs that allow people from various socioeconomic backgrounds to enter the workplace and be trained, because that's how you develop rising stars. How is someone who hasn't got an MBA or master's or a degree for that fact going to enter a big tech world if it says on the job description they need to have one? How can they show their potential? So I think if you are in a position of hiring, those are the sort of things that you have to think about from a diversity and inclusion point of view, because education is very much as important as race or gender when you're thinking about hiring.
Yeah. So to just remind my friends, my listeners, we are talking about now you've got the job. Now what, right?
Yes.
You've been looking for this job. You've been interviewing for it. It's either your first job or you just got promoted. Now, okay. So Tanya, when you look, I mean, as a recruiter, from your experience, do qualifications actually make a difference? And at which point? What would differentiate someone who's got the paperwork versus someone who doesn't or is less qualified in terms of degree and etc. How are they different?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on your expertise. So if I'm thinking about a job that requires credentials, your STEM type roles where you need to actually know how to code, there's two ways of looking at it. There's your standard education. You've gone to university, you've got your degree, you've got your master's, you might even have a PhD and you are qualified technically. Or there are people who we try to actually hire from boot camps or alternative routes who still have those skills, but maybe haven't done it through the traditional pathway. And then I would say for non-tech related roles or roles that are just a bit more like business support, I think that is where you can get away more without having qualifications. And that's where your experience is literally the most valuable thing ever. And you can tell when you're speaking to a candidate that this person, yes, they don't have a degree related to this specialist area, but they've got that knowledge. They know what they're doing.
Awesome. Okay. So is there anything else that you can share with us that would help the person who's just landed their new gig, who's just been promoted? Now what, right? What are some of the things that they should be thinking of, doing to differentiate themselves, to continue selling themselves within the organization, to stand out for future success? Yeah.
I think this is really a question that depends on who you are as a person. And I say this for multiple reasons. I think as with anything in life, and your podcast is about lifestyle and everything, you need to actually know what you want out of life. There's certain things that are out of our control, but there's also some things that you actually just need to ask yourself, like, what do I want out of my career? I don't think you should be in the passenger seat of your career. So your progression is going to be very much tied to what you want out of your career. And I say this because I have friends who have very openly confessed that, Tanya, I don't aspire to rise. I don't want additional responsibilities. I don't want to manage a team. I just want a nice salary and to live my life. And you know, I hear it. I actually hear it because it's a valid point. But then I also have friends, and I am one of those people who likes to think long term. And to me, career advancement is all about being intentional. And your reason for being intentional is very much individual, like to you. It's very specific to you as a person. So if you are someone like me, for example, who, when I look at the workplace, when I look at the fact that I work and live in a country where people like me are not represented in boardrooms, I know that my progression is greater than just me and my career and my success. My progression is tied into getting other young Black women who look like me into those same jobs with better progression in the next 10, 20 years. So I'm thinking long term. And when I'm going into work, without putting all that pressure on myself, I am thinking there needs to be a change. There needs to be people like me in boardrooms. There needs to be people like us are not represented. And because of that, I'm very intentional to say, I've done this. I want to do the next thing. Because what I don't want is to get into those boardrooms and not understand anything that they're saying or understanding how things work. And that in itself is a journey. It's a process. And I'm very aware of that. And because of that, I will ask the questions that I know are necessary for me to understand that. So I think being intentional is like the key thing here. And really ask yourself, what do I want out of my career? Yeah. And the moment you ask yourself that question, you can start to create a very loose plan, because some things will just happen naturally. Some things are out of our control, but at least you'll be able to pull yourself up and say, actually, maybe I need help here. Maybe I need to focus on this. Maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to take a lateral move. You can start to create a plan once you know what you want from your career.
That is very interesting to me, and excites me, because what you've just mentioned about the difference between some of your friends and yourself is what we used to call them A and B players in my old organization, right? What we would say is, listen, who are our A players? The people we know want to grow. And how do we know? Well, they have said it. It's in their career development plan, or PDP, like you said before. They are showing up in rooms and networking programs, and, they are very intentional. It's very clear. And their performance is that of an A player. And so 100%, 99% to 100%, those people would make it into the boardrooms you just spoke about, right? Because of the intentionality. The B players are those who are like, listen, just pay me my check.
Yeah.
Right? I am going to show up. I'm going to do the bare minimum. I'm not going to do above and beyond, but I'll do my job. And some organizations are great. Great organizations also accommodate for people like that, right? Understanding that we not all shoot the lights out. And so...
And it's true.
They also had those B players, and those people are also important, because they're the people not necessarily looking for the next big thing, big role. They're very they are like your stable people. But my point is, organizations, managers, leaders, they do see it, and they're able to differentiate. Who are my A players? Who are my B players? Right? So intentionality is so important, so that you go into the right bucket. You can't then be, fired up to be a giant, right? To be sitting but not doing the things that will get you there, and expect to get there, because you will end up in the B player bucket, unfortunately, even though you're an A player. So I want to add to that, to say, actually, that is so right. And these are real conversations happening in organizations. And they are buckets, by the way, right? They are who's our key talent. Some people call them key talent.
It's true.
A players, it can be seen. So just make sure that, yes, you got the job. What about now? Well, make sure they know you're an A player. Make sure they know you're a key talent. Okay.
This is it. Yeah.
So exciting to me. All right. So I think let's close off with attitude. We've spoken performance, we've spoken intentionality. Let's talk personality and attitude in the workplace. What does that do for your success in your future, right? What have you seen? What are some case studies you've come across from some of your people that you've helped, Recruiterbae, or just in your professional career? What does attitude or personality, does it have any bearing on success? Around that?
Yeah, I love this question. Yes, is my answer, in short, because I don't think anyone wants to work with someone who is hard work in terms of their attitude or the energy that they bring into work.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially post-pandemic, there's been a real emphasis on how you treat people that you work with, because as the whole world actually experienced that Black Swan together, and it changed the world of work forever. And there's a very popular term that I love. I think it's the ex-CEO of Porsche. I think it's Peter Schutz. He coined a term, hire character, train skill. And I love that, because you can be the most technically competent person, but if you're a horrible person to work with, you're going to hinder your progression. You can't be trusted in boardrooms. You can't be trusted to represent a company. And we've seen this with like even the most successful creatives or CEOs or business people, that their character will determine the success that they have in the long run. So I would say show up as best as you can in terms of being authentic. You don't have to pretend to be someone else. But I think be a nice person to work with. I'm not saying be the person making people coffee and doing things that you shouldn't have to be doing. I'm just saying be a genuine person who is good to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people have been let go less for their performance and more for who they are, how they treat people, how they show up. To your point, higher character, train skill. Because you cannot teach someone how to show up. You can't teach someone how to be, right? How to be respectful, how to be kind, how to, So the soft stuff is also very important. And I think All right. So I think that's it. I think we've covered, high level, most of what would be very important for you to set yourself up for success once you get a role, a new position. So Tanya, before I let you go, right, maybe share with my listeners any last remarks, right? Any sort of nuggets, tips around this. If you had to just give a one-liner or a paragraph or a summary, what is the one thing you want them to walk away from this conversation with?
I think the one thing, if you are a person who wants to set yourself up for success, just be intentional. Be intentional with your career and reflect on the questions that we discussed earlier on, and actually asking yourself, what does success look like to me? Not to others, to me. What do I want from my career, and how will that impact my life and the things I can do in my life? And you will start to see that from that, you can create a plan that feels very natural, and then you can leverage the help of the people around you, whether it be your network, your colleagues, your manager, whoever it is, to actually start to create some momentum in progressing within your career.
Awesome. And thank you very much. Right. Thank you so much. Let's jump into the next thing without actually showing you my appreciation or sharing it. I'm very appreciative, right? I know we're actually recording this on the weekend, and you are in the UK, I'm in South Africa. There's a time difference there. You could be, out and about enjoying Saturday, but you chose to be here with us, sharing with us all your nuggets, all these very important tips. And I'm very, very grateful. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you for even having me and for giving me the platform.
Absolutely. And you will be here back a lot more, trust me. Lots to cover. There's a lot of topics I know you will add value to, but thank you so much for the very first one. Now,
my pleasure.
I always want to share a book with, if it's linked to the topic we spoke about, great. If not, that's still okay. So what book are you reading, or that you've read, that you think would help, my friends today, based on what we've just spoken about, or just in general in terms of personal, professional development?
Oh, good question. Oh my gosh, so many are coming to mind. My mind has just gone, there's so many. I'm a huge fan of popular psychology. So I would say the first one is definitely Atomic Habits because it's very well written, it's easy to understand, and it allows you to walk away with practical tips on building and like developing healthy habits. I also think that personal finance ties in really well to your career, just because you don't want to just work for the sake of working. You want to work and have some sort of something to show for it.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite books, again, psychology related, is The Psychology of Money. And the author, he basically, and this ties into what you've just said about soft skills, he sheds light on how our behavior determines our financial success. So essentially building wealth and money management is like a soft skill, not a hard skill. So you can learn it. And he does it through like short stories, and it's like brilliantly written. And those are like books that I've read in the past, which are great. But at the moment, I'm actually reading The 12-Week Year, which ties into what you said earlier on about movement over perfection, I think. And it basically is all about execution.
Yeah.
Because as disciplined as I am very slow to execute things. I just take my time. I don't know what it is in my brain that says, no, I'll do it tomorrow. And it's so bad. It's such a hindrance to my success. So I've picked up a few gems and I will let you know how I get on with it.
Awesome. Thank you. I will make sure to note all those books in the description box below for everyone to be able to get a copy of each of those. And in terms of your social handles, if anyone wants to ping particularly for Recruiterbae, where can they find you?
So we're on all platforms at Recruiterbae. So recruiter spelled as recruiter, BAE, as in before anyone else.
Ooh, is that before anyone else?
Yeah, so people don't know this, but it's actually recruiter before anyone else, as in like you would your bae, as in your boyfriend or husband. So I am your recruiter before anyone else.
It's so dope. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, I'm so grateful to all my listeners. There you have it. These are some of the nuggets that we wanted to share with you from Tanya and I's perspective. These are some of the nuggets that we wanted to share with you from Tanya and I's perspective. And if you're listening to this episode and you've come this far, I am truly thankful. Thank you. If you liked it, please rate it, share it with your friends, share feedback with me, and let me know if you like these kind of topics, what else you'd like me to talk about and cover. Otherwise, thank you so much. I look forward to the next episode. Goodbye, and continue to level up.